Hey,
Oh,
Kent from Winnipeg. Welcome to Unscripted
it's
Moments,
me.
a podcast about propaganda.
Wow, what a crazy thing to have an entire podcast dedicated to.
I
A,
know,
a
right?
punk, like a goofy ass punk band, or what do they consider themselves?
Yeah,
Metal? A goofy
something.
ass
Well,
punk metal band from Winnipeg.
and Kent, I know you love Alkaline Trio as well, so I'll just tell you a little bit of the backstory about why we're doing this. But like, there's another podcast that discusses the entire discography of Alkaline Trio, and that's kind of where I got the idea. So
Oh my God, that's the one I should be on.
you
I
should.
could, I could discuss their discography for days.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're your
Funny.
favorite band, right?
They are, in fact, my favorite band. And, I have wait, let's uh, pause for a moment from our sponsor.
Yeah,
Can you hear that?
yeah,
Can you hear the can open? That
yeah.
is a delicious, sparkling liquid death.
Ooh, lovely. Very good. The most notorious of podcast sponsors within the entire punk rock scene.
Entirely. They're sponsoring everyone, including goofy old me. So there you
Well,
go.
there you
Anyway,
go. That's
enough
sweet.
about that. Yeah, Alkaline Trio is my favorite band, and I've had the good fortune of working with them off and on when it fits both our schedules since about 2013. So,
A-
what do you want
Amazing.
to talk about? From here to infirmary or good morning? No, sorry.
Well, I
I
love that you were just
digress.
out with them too. That's
Yeah, I
great.
just did a couple of shows. A good friend of mine does most of their touring, and he was also working for Rancid this year. So there was a overlap on the end of the
Yeah.
Boston to Berkeley, and the Alkaline Bad Religion. So yeah, it was like a great pleasure to go spend an extended weekend with all those people because it may come as no surprise. Some of Bad Religion are some of my and their crew, some of my oldest and dearest friends in the world.
Well, they're
So
um
it was
they're
fun.
coming to Buffalo. They're coming to Buffalo where I live in a few weeks. So I'll be at that Bad Religion War on Women Alkaline Trio show in just a couple of weeks. So I'm pretty
Yeah,
excited. Was it a great show? Great tour?
it's a great show. I was actually super sad to leave,
Yeah, I bet.
but
Man.
yeah, it was just awesome.
Well, Kent, the reason that we're hanging out is because of propaganda, but in Winnipeg, and your name has like come up a whole bunch of times throughout the course of doing this show because
Hmm.
of your involvement in that late 80s, early 90s Winnipeg scene. And I just want to know a little bit about your life growing up there. A little overview of what it was like growing up in Winnipeg and getting into the music scene there as a kid.
Well, it was incredibly boring
Mm-hmm.
growing up there. And, full disclosure, like I became a punk rock fan at about 13. Two different people introduced me, one to the Clash and one to the Ramones. And the kid that introduced me to the Ramones had moved to it was like a lower middle class suburb. Not lower, I guess it was middle class. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in the middle of town, and my mom remarried when I was about 13, and we moved to St. Vital, for all you Winnipeg knowers, which is probably
Mm-hmm.
most of your audience. And in St. Vital, this kid moved there from the North End, and he was like, a little rougher than everyone else. And he introduced me to the Ramones, and I pretty much proceeded to be, I was like a scrawny little kid, grew up with a single mom, didn't know how to like fight or anything. So I was pretty much like a closet punk fan until I got out of high school. Like in my last year of high school, I finally met another guy that liked the Clash. And, there were a couple other punk rockers in my school, and I was in awe of them. And, they would fight and get beat up. And I was just terrified, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
I had no interest in any of that. So it wasn't really until, I was also a kid that, especially because I had a stepdad who I couldn't stand, I wanted to get the hell out of the house immediately. So I moved out, shortly before I turned 18. I guess it was the fall, right when I turned 18, I moved out, and then I started hanging out downtown. Then I started going to punk shows. So a lot of the really early, the really cool shit that happened in the early 80s that some of my people that would become my good friends went to, like, Brett, who's known as Limo around NOFX, who was the drummer of Gorilla Gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to shows. He's like a big scary dude, so he was going to those shows, when he was 13 and 14, like most people, and not like Winnipeg was that tough or scary, but to me it was.
Yeah. What kind of bands were you seeing when you started going to shows? Like, what are some of your earliest memories of live music in the city?
Well, it's funny. I went to my first arena concert was Rush, and that would have been 82. And about the same time, I saw a band called the Dub Rifles at like a rec center. And even at that show, like the meddlers were allegedly outside and going to beat everyone up. It was like this, the Dub Rifles. If you haven't heard them, you should look them up. I think there's like everything. There's a smattering, like a sprinkle of their stuff on YouTube. They were kind of like a ska. I guess they were a ska band. I mean, they were fucking incredible though.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I saw DOA and the Dead Kennedys, and that was like 84, 85. And then, a long list. In those years, like 82 to 84, I saw a bunch of metal like Judas Priest and Def Leppard. I remember Uriah Heep opening for Def Leppard, and Uriah Heep blew them away. They were so amazing. That was a real eye opener, because I was actually there with this girl that had third row tickets who I dated for a moment, I think, really just to get to that third row spot. But it was pretty life changing. I mean, this guy was like bashing this big old piano around. I was like, whoa, that's something.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a slower progression for me, than a lot of kids, a lot of tons of people in the punk scene. Like, yeah, when I was 12, I was already sick of going to punk shows or whatever. Like, I mean, the NOFX guys, they were all, going to Hollywood, and when it was, when the punk scene was really scary there, like, Mike's documented pretty well at like 13, 14, 15 years old. I was not that kid at all.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that regard too. And like those stories they documented in the hepatitis bathtub book were just crazy scary. So I really can't imagine. I'm like the most peaceful person ever. So being thrust into conflict like that is not really my thing. So what you're saying about your life resonates a lot with me too.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, I've still never been in a fight, and granted my, later on wandering through the world being a drunken asshole, I credit a lot of my never being in a fight to my crew, not like my actual road crew guys like Limo, who, it's like, I remember one time actually this big dude, he was a blues musician in Winnipeg named Dave McLean, literally said to me, "I'm going to fight you." And Brett was standing right beside me and looked at him and he goes, "That's cool, but we don't fight fair." And he was like, a fucking dreadlock mohawk and 6'4", and the guy just looked at him and walked away. It was like,
okay. Well, I want to know about your band too. So you mentioned Gorilla. You mentioned Brett Limo, who is well known within the NoFX crew and appears often in the Backstage Passport series, which I've seen a couple times. And I'm curious about meeting Brett, forming Gorilla, and how you all fit into that Winnipeg scene in the late 80s and early 90s. How does this all come about for you to be in your own band?
Right. So I was in a couple bands before that. My first band was called Wrong. And the only real notable thing about that was the singer is a woman named Jake Moore, who was the singer of the Raggedy Anns, who were, very famous. Again, a band I didn't see. They were playing shows before I was unafraid of going to shows, but she was in our band. So anyway, from there, I met Brett because some guys I knew that I think it was one of the guys that was in that band was involved in this thing. We opened a venue in Winnipeg in 87, and we called it the Cauldron, and it was on the third floor of this old Oddfellows hall. And it was like one way up. There was a fire escape too, but it was kind of a scary death trap. But with the help of Mike Lambert, who was rest his soul, recently passed, he was the local punk promoter. We did all kinds of shows. So I was actually, before, I got my early start doing a lot of roadie stuff, and then we opened this club, and I just like they had ideas of doing all kinds of different things at this place, like being a full cooperative, and there was food and cooking and a lot of art, and these artists, local artists, painted all the walls. But we hung a PA and we started doing shows, and we did the Circle Jerks. We did an SNFU show where we put like 600 people in there, and realistically, it should have never had more than 300 people in it.
Nice.
We did a No Means No show. So I ended up living in the place, booking the bands. We couldn't afford to pay. We only lasted a year. We couldn't afford to pay the sound guy anymore. So he sort of showed me around it, and I just started mixing, especially the local shows and the openers at the big shows. I think I might have even mixed some of the headliners, because in those days, even bigger bands like Circle Jerks were traveling with like a front of house guy or whatever. I don't think I mixed Circle Jerks, but I did. So that's where I really started doing sound. And I lived there, and we had a jam space in one of the side rooms, and I got to know Limo. He was in a band called Global Genocide, whose singer was named Chris Follett. And so now, and I actually just reached out to Brett. I was going to actually have him join us, but I think he's cutting hair because he is a thriving barber in British Columbia, Seashell, where he lives now. He cuts hair and is happy as he's ever been.
Awesome.
But anyway, so so he and I just started jamming in this place, and this other friend of ours became the singer, and that dude Randy Steffes, who was more recently in SNFU, and now the Real Mackenzies, was playing guitar with us. There was another guy that lived up the street that played guitar for a while, and then we had one singer, and then he moved to the West Coast, and then Beth joined us, and as
the rest
everyone
is history.
listening, I'm sure knows, Biff Naked, she's a legend. So we played for a couple of years. Brett and Biff got married. The marriage broke up. The band broke up. We almost kept it going. And then through a long story of us moving to Vancouver and me getting a house sound job there, I met NOFX. And then I went on tour with Coffin Break from Seattle, and we stayed at Mike's house. And then I heard from, and this is where No Means No ties in.
Yeah.
They actually called Craig, who did sound for No Means No, and asked him to go to Europe, and he couldn't or wouldn't do it, but he mentioned it to me. And I called Mike, and I had stayed with Mike like 3 months earlier, and Mike just gave me the job on the phone, bought me a plane ticket. I almost didn't go because Gorilla almost didn't break up, but then we broke up. So I went on the NOFX trip, and the rest there is history for me. Afforded
Amazing.
me a long and luxurious career. I don't know if that luxurious is the right term, but
amazing. Well, I can tell that you like No Means No as well, because I was listening to the Gorilla demo a couple times recently, and the song Spillage, which folks can hear on YouTube, has a huge No Means No vibe to it. Like you and Brett are really, really dialed in rhythmically. Like, was that some of your biggest influences? Because it's not like,
absolutely.
It's a very out of the ordinary sound for what you might hear today. And I was like, whoa, this is so No Means No. I love it.
Yeah. So funny story, right before we broke up, we made an LP, a full length record with John and Craig, who was the mixer of No Means No, and John, the drummer. And it exists only in our minds. No, there's a copy somewhere, but it's never been heard publicly. And it's like, it's a little more polished than that tape. That tape was like the first thing we ever did. And it's funny because, just to cut straight to Propaganda from there, obviously I was only with NOFX a couple of years, and we took Propaganda to Europe, and I didn't think I knew any of them. They're younger than me, probably 10 years younger than me, I would imagine. How old's Chris now? 45?
I think it's like 51.
Is he really? Oh,
yeah.
Not even. It's funny how those 4 years seem like so much when you're in your early 20s as opposed to now. And I turned 55 yesterday, so we're not that far apart.
Yeah.
But so Chris, he and I did not see eye to eye on a lot of stuff early on, and we kind of like fucked with each other a bunch. I mean, it was mostly relatively good natured, but one of the things that he'd made fun of me for was being a gorilla. Oddly enough, and this is like in Europe in 1993, I believe, summer '93. It might have been '94. I fucking can't keep it straight, but
well. Like, also, I know that I sent you something earlier where Chris was trying to document the shows that the band was playing in 91 and 92, and he listed Gorilla. So I know there's a little bit of live overlap, and I'm curious if you remember playing with them.
No, I mean, I do not. I cannot, which doesn't mean anything because I don't remember, shit that happened on those Alkaline Trio shows last week. So I know fucking, I didn't think we had played with them, but I don't know. It turned out my memory of Chris, he was in a band with Chris, who was a singer of Brett's old band, Global Genocide, and Gorilla shared a rehearsal space with them. So we sort of put that together at some point. This is before Propaganda, and they were more of a metal band. And Chris was, again, I guess I would have been 22, so he would have been, a minor.
Yeah,
they're not in Winnipeg. At 18, you weren't a minor. In Winnipeg, you were grown up.
Were you aware of Propaganda when you were living in Winnipeg, or did they only come onto your radar?
No, not
later?
At all. No, my radar. I remember vividly when they came on my radar, because when I first started coming to California to do stuff with NOFX, after the first thing I did was a show in Vancouver and Victoria. And then I went to Europe with them. And then I started coming to California. That's funny I say coming because I'm actually in Oregon where I live now. But I started going to San Francisco, and I would stay with Mike. And I remember him playing a cassette in his car that just, like sonically was inaudible almost. He's like, "This band is fucking great." I was like, "Okay, buddy, if you say so." Like I couldn't even tell. But I was like, "Fuck, they're from Winnipeg. Yeah, of course you should sign them." Like I thought it was awesome. And it wasn't really until, How to Clean Everything. And then, we took them on tour shortly after that. And that, I mixed their sound for that 2.5 weeks because we would always take fat bands and Mike always wanted them to sound good. So I always mixed them for, forever.
Tell me.
And they were.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say they were incredible.
Tell me about those shows.
They floored me.
Yeah, tell me about those shows in Europe.
I mean, we were playing good sized clubs, like, probably between 500 and pushing 1,000 people by then, I would guess. It's, it's such a blur. And they were on our bus, and, Jord was like sweet, and John was even sweeter, and Chris was a little rough. And, I was eating fucking McDonald's or whatever and cheeseburgers. So I'm sure he thought I was a pile of shit. We were all staying like we would stay in whatever communal, like those size of clubs in Europe. A lot of them have accommodations. So we were like joined at the hip for 2.5 weeks. And, I consider all three of those guys lifelong friends because of it, for sure. But it was, as far as the shows, this is terrible, but I'll tell it anyway.
Okay.
My most vivid memory was, so it was like a 7-week tour, and Propaganda did 2.5 weeks, and then the Offspring did the rest. And I had actually negotiated with Brett that I would mix the Offspring when they came. And there was one day of overlap where Propaganda opened and the Offspring was the middle band, and then NOFX was obviously headlining the NOFX show. And it was like the craziest shit sandwich. I did sound for all three bands. And, the Offspring were fully jet lagged, and they were young and just terrible. And Propaganda, after 2.5 weeks, were so good. I had their sound dialed perfectly. Like, it was amazing. And then it was like, oh my God, what the hell is this? And, I didn't know anything about the Offspring at that point either. So that was kind of funny. But
amazing.
Yeah, my most vivid memory. And again, they were playing at that point, they were playing How to Clean Everything, like, probably the whole record.
Yeah.
So again,
okay.
It's probably a lot of why I lean so strongly towards that record. But it's just such a phenomenal record.
So let's talk about this, Kent. You and I got into we were sort of going back and forth recently on the poll for the punk rock vinyl guy, where he had the propaganda poll. And I know you have extremely specific views of how to clean everything, and I'm sort of on the opposite spectrum of you on this regard. So my first
Right.
record that I had was How to Clean Everything. The first song I ever heard by them was Anti-Manifesto, but that's not my favorite work of theirs. And I want to give you the time and the space to talk about how you feel about How to Clean Everything right here, right now on the Propaganda podcast.
Okay. Well, again, and I believe almost everything is informed by bias, and I 100% am informed by bias. Like that record and that time and seeing that version of that band. And, again, John and I are lifelong friends as well. And he went on to do the Weaker Thans, which again, I'm soft. Like the Weaker Thans is my favorite Winnipeg band of all time.
Awesome.
Hands down. So there's that. I mean, I just sort of lean that way. And I really appreciate the heavier stuff, but especially having listened to loud punk rock for a living for my, the majority of my life now, like over 30 years, I don't want to hear it. I don't even want to hear a distorted guitar unless you're paying me. Literally, like I'm just my ears are that tired of it. So, I listened to Dave Haas. Like Dave Haas released a record on Friday that is brilliant. And I love that. And I still listen to the Weaker Thans and John's stuff. And, all my punk friends that became troubadours, like I have a whole playlist and it's got, Dan and Matt and Joey Cape. Yeah. And the list goes on. Tony Sly, obviously, and all those people. So that's again, it's bias. I mean, being around when that record was made and came out, and that was just it was everything to me at that time. Especially, the pride of a Winnipeg band coming along, and me being a Winnipeg kid who had like suddenly become an international touring professional was like, it all tied in.
So before we talk a little bit more about the songs, I just want to talk a little bit about the songs and How to Clean Everything in a few minutes. But I'm curious about your friendship with John K. Sampson. He's never been on the podcast, so we don't really have any contact with him. But I'm curious just about your friendship with him over the years.
I mean, we just kept in touch as much as anything. And, it's been a long, long time. No, it hasn't been that long. We were actually in Winnipeg the summer of 2019, and he was playing a free solo show outside, and we got to go see him. And he's still Jason, the drummer of the Weaker Thans, was still playing with him, and they did a few Weaker Thans songs. And we caught up for a few minutes, but I hadn't seen him for a few years before that. But we sort of kept in touch. He's completely gone off of digital.
Yeah.
So I'm not one to call someone on the phone and chat for, without some intent. I spend enough time on the phone.
Right.
But, we would get together for coffee and stuff like that from time to time, and I would see them, touring with NOFX every single summer doing festivals in Europe back when the Weaker Thans were at their height. We would run into each other there and spend some time. And, Jason, the drummer of that band, was also the drummer in Red Fisher, a band listed on Chris's list. And Gorilla and Red Fisher did a lot of shows together. So Jason and I go back as far as almost anyone, definitely anyone that I know in touring.
Do you have a favorite Red Fisher memory?
Oh, man. I don't think so. I can't even think of a memory other than that we did a bunch of shows together and we loved each other, and I thought they were amazing.
Awesome. I think they're amazing too. They're so good.
Yeah, really, really great. I still, I don't remember the last time I saw him, but I still am loosely in touch with John. I have him on Instagram. I feel like
awesome.
One of the things I know people have so much negative to say about social media, but I feel like I keep up with like a good 1,000 people that I feel like I'm in touch with, even though I probably haven't had a conversation with them in a decade, because I can watch the little bits of their lives that they want to put out there. And that's great. That's great. To me. It's like, it's the greatest thing.
What's so crazy about that, Kent, is that you and I connected on Instagram as well. And before that, you were just the guy that I would see at the soundboard when I would see NoFX live, or whenever I was watching Backstage Passport. Like I was like watching you on the train in Russia and stuff, and I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, the guy that I've like that has been like tangentially a part of my life, you in other
Right.
ways by listening and being a fan of NoFX. Here you are chatting with me while I'm on the bus riding from the Toronto airport to go get my car, setting up a podcast interview. And it's really incredible that like you even took the time to reply to me. So I just love stuff like that because it makes us all able to connect and have these special kinds of experiences like we're having right now, you know?
It really is world shrinking. And I got to tell you, I mean, I'm intrigued that like a guy from Buffalo that's so obsessed with Propaganda that he has a podcast solely about their songs and not even their best album, and would make the trek to see all 3 nights at the Park Theater.
Dude, it was the best weekend
all those
of my life.
venues. I bet I would have absolutely loved to be there. I've never seen a show at the Park. I've kind of looked in the windows when I've been in town in the last few years, but it's all those venues. Like the Burton Cummings Theater is a place that I grew up literally under a mile from that place and used to go to the movies there. Like I'm pretty sure I saw the original Star Wars there when it was released.
Amazing.
Or Indiana Jones or one of those things. So, and that's a place, I've been there with NOFX repeatedly. I was there with Rise Against in 2017. Like it's kind of really fun to get to go back there now.
That's amazing. Well, let's talk about How to Clean Everything real quick. I'm curious about maybe like a couple of your favorite tracks, any like specific reasons why you love those particular songs. I'm just curious on your thoughts on this record because this is my 7th favorite record of all time, but it also happens to be the 7th Propaganda record. So I'm sure you can do the math on that one.
I'm not really good at math, but
yeah. What are some of your favorite moments or tracks on this record that really stand out to you?
Well, Anti-Manifesto right out of the gate, I think is just genius. Like it's just, it's like I don't know. It could, like on the enough with Scott Sucks being on the record. I compare it to Party at Ground Zero. I don't know if you're familiar with Fishbone, but that was another sort of like a first release by a band that, when that came into our lives, it just blew me away than a band. That was another, not that we could ever play like those guys or even close, but they were such a huge influence on me and on Gorilla because they could do everything and we wanted to do everything. And, Propaganda similarly. They wrote a great ska song about how ska sucks. So, and Haile Selassie Up Your Ass, great reggae song.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not super analytical. I'm like, I just know what I like. And again, I fully embrace the fact that it's largely informed by bias because it's a time and a place for me. But end to end, I love the record for sure.
I'm curious about do you have any memories of like Toothpick Hercules, the John K. Samson band at all? Because like they did Leg Hold Trap for How to Clean Everything as well. And I'm curious if you have any memories of that band either.
I don't know if there was like a couple of years there where I think, a lot of the time when Propaganda was coming into their own, and even before that, I feel like I maybe was aware of Toothpick Hercules, but no, I have no actual memories. I was in the clouds and doing what I was doing already. I think.
Was there? Point. So I know you love How to Clean Everything. It's your favorite one. I'm curious about your thoughts on Less Talk More Rock as well, because that's not a massive stylistic change between those two records. It's not like a massive leap like you would think about like with Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes or something like that. Do you have any thoughts on the Less Talk More Rock second LP?
I like it for sure. But yeah, again, I'm not one to really come up with a whole lot of analysis per se.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at it now, seeing if I can conjure up any. I should have given all these records a listen because it's been a long time.
Oh, it's fine.
But you know, good records. They're all great records. There's no,
What was the mood like in your social circle around this band in the early and mid 90s? Like, you were already involved with NOFX back then, Mike and Aaron running the label. I'm curious about any memories you may have about other people's thoughts on the band that you were friends with. Was Propaganda like, were people like thinking like, wow, this is like the next like up and coming most amazing band? Was it pretty positive back then about them?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. Now that I think about it, I I think Less Talk was the one they recorded. I lived 2 blocks away, and my memories are super vague, but they're recorded at Razor's Edge, if I'm not mistaken. Does that ring a bell to you?
Say, which one was it again?
Less Talk, More Rock.
Yeah, they recorded it twice because the first time they came down, they didn't have enough material ready, and Ryan and Mike sent them back to Winnipeg basically to finish writing.
Right. Yeah.
And then they came back.
Yeah, I lived 2 blocks away from that studio. And again, I just have vague memories of like getting coffee with John, maybe getting Jord weed. No, he didn't smoke weed. That's bullshit. I lied. Something like that. But yeah, it's again, it's all very vague after 25 years.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
Well, you know what's so funny, Kent? I've always heard musicians and people who go on tour a lot say things like, God, my memories are just so vague of this. And I'm always like, why are the memories so vague? And then I went to Winnipeg for that weekend where I was on the move 16 hours a day, going from spot to spot all over Winnipeg, talking to as many people who listen to the podcast as I could. And then as soon as I go to the airport to come back to Buffalo, the memories started fading instantly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Like you're on the move nonstop and it just gets you.
Well, and what's your capacity? And then to conjure them up, like I feel like if, a lot of memories get triggered by other memories or questions, or I think a lot of my memories are more from the stories that I've heard about the stuff I've done than actually remembering it.
Yeah.
But also, I did a lot of partying, as you and anyone who knows me would know. So I don't think that helped.
Yeah. Do you maintain any friendships with anybody in Propaganda? Like, do you keep in touch with any of these guys at all?
Well, it's funny that I've definitely exchanged the odd sort of like, hi, how are you, with Chris on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And actually Todd probably even a little more than that.
Yeah.
I definitely, again, it's already 2015, but they were going to come down and play the San Francisco Fat 25th anniversary. And so I think I talked to Jord, like he and I, got together from time to time over the years. He was living close to a friend of mine in Winnipeg at one point when I would visit, which I used to do a lot more frequently before my mom passed away. But
yeah.
So, I would say very casually, I've maintained friendships with all of them, but, not really. I would love to, actually see them play and say hello for sure. But,
yeah,
again, watching them on social media has been enjoyable. I tell you what, I love Todd's art. Todd's art like takes me to where I grew up. Like it's really, and I wrote him and was, disclosed that. I was really blown away by it. And him, I never toured with him. We've known each other as long as he's been in the band, but so the foundation that I have with the other two isn't there per se.
Love it. I love it. Well, Kent, I just love the fact that you're willing to hang out with me and chat about Propaganda. And talk any stories you remember. I mean, this is sort of like an oral history project. So like I just dig up as
Right.
many people's stories as I can, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And I want to chat with Brett too. So if you wind up checking in with Limo lately, tell him I would love to get his version of those early days stories as well too.
Well, I wanted to actually see if you remembered the name of Chris's band that Chris was in, because his old singer, Chris Follett, was in a band with Chris for a while we were doing, like I said, that was I have like an image of Chris Hanna at this rehearsal, like a nerdy kid with his guitar up around his neck playing metal. But
I love it.
That's my very first memory of Chris. And, we shared this rehearsal space, so we were rarely in it at the same time. Didn't learn each other's names. Again, it was the perspective of meeting this amazing band from Winnipeg by them coming on tour with NOFX in Europe was kind of really cool. It was really phenomenal and really a source of pride to me, that this great band had come from Winnipeg, which has a long history of great punk, Stretch Marks, Personality Crisis. If anyone's never heard Personality Crisis, go on YouTube and look up that record right away. Creatures for a While, I believe it's called. God, I can't even remember, stuff like that.
I want to run a name past you. Is the name of the band you're thinking of Sweet Medusa?
I mean, I have no idea.
Because I'm looking at a picture in 1991 of Jeff LaPlante, Chris Hanna, and Jason Tucker from Meat Rack playing a show at the Royal Albert Arms with that's Jord on drums. So maybe this is not the same band, but I know that Chris played briefly in a band called Sweet Medusa as well. So that's the only one I was able to dig up at the moment.
Right. No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, Kent, I'm really just thrilled to be able to hang out with you today and chat about these memories and
likewise.
get some of these stories down. I'm super pumped that, I think the reason that we caught your attention was because of the episode we did on global genocide, the Fucking Rich, Fuck the Poor episode, where Jord and Deb Sinha were on the episode. And I know that Brett was sort of like playing drums when Deb had left the band for college or something like that. So it's just awesome to see all these little life stories overlap. And I'm glad that you were willing to come on and tell me these. You know what I mean? I love it. I love it.
For sure. Yeah, that one of my first memories of doing sound for a band was global genocide. So, that was at that place, the Cauldron, when they were opening for it might have been DRI or Gangrene.
Yeah, Corrosion of Conformity, maybe.
Could have been COC. I don't think so. I know we did Gangrene and I know we did DRI. And even when I say I know, it could be fabricated. I could have totally made it up. So
were you friends with the Corpus Vile guys and Derek, who were promoting a lot of shows? Yeah, nice. Derek was on here as well.
Not really close, but I mean, they played shows for us at that venue. I feel like I must have done their sound as well.
I love it. Well, Kent, I've kept you for a while now, and I appreciate your time.
Perfect amount of time.
Yeah, thank you, Kent.
Thanks for having me. I will.